and welcome to the programme. I'm Nima Abouardi, and this week we're bringing you a travel special. The Arab Spring has polarised tourism across this region. Here in Dubai, visitor numbers are better than ever, but political troubles have hit places like Egypt and Tunisia hard. So is this a pattern that's set to continue? We'll be taking a look. Also coming up this week, pillars of profit. Faith grows in Mecca's tourist potential. Plain and simple, why is Emirates central to Dubai's success? And poolside promise. Egypt says its political shift makes no difference to tourists.
Come, if you are wearing bikinis, bikinis are welcome. If you like to enjoy a glass of wine with your dinner, still served, the laws permit it, the people are accepting it. So that's the message.
But first, Saudi Arabia is a famously conservative country. It's the seat of Islam with religious sites like Mecca. But unless you're a Muslim, you won't be allowed to visit them. So why then is the government upping its spend on tourism, and where's the money going? Katie Watson reports from the region's biggest travel show that was held here in Dubai this week.
Most of the people at this week's trade show probably won't ever visit Saudi. After all, unless it's for business or religious tourism, visas are pretty hard to come by. But by the looks of the stand behind me, which is one of the biggest and the most decadent with its fake turrets and castle-like appearance, it seems like Saudi authorities are trying to make the place more appealing. These men trying to show off Saudi's culture inside the stand weren't exactly rushed off their feet, but there was obvious interest in speaking to businesses from the kingdom.
As chair of this organization and the government representative who are running the show, is to really get tourism to stand on its feet as a major sector in the Saudi economy. We believe so, tourism, and our economic council and the council of ministers believe so, that tourism will be probably the largest job creator in Saudi Arabia. So for us, it's critical that the mindset is there to be able to become even more welcoming to the tourist.
No doubt the past 2 years of regional unrest have concentrated minds. Saudi, like many parts of the Middle East and North Africa, has a huge youth unemployment problem, and expanding the tourism industry could help create much needed jobs. But there's more to it than that. The government's been getting wise to its own people's potential. A recent survey showed that Saudis are the biggest spenders when they travel abroad, budgeting for an average of just over $6,500 a trip. Compare that with a global average of under $2,500, and that's reason enough to try and convince Saudis to stay at home and spend their money. And where better to do that than in cities like Mecca? Regarded as the holiest place in Islam, all Muslims have to make pilgrimage here at least once in their lives. Developers and international hotel chains have realised that putting money here makes sense, with rooms going for thousands of dollars a night during religious festivals.
It's a religious destination for over 1.6 billion Muslims around the world. So we would look at that figure as a huge potential for us. You have the airport expansion, Jeddah Airport. You have the railway, which is going to connect all major cities of Saudi, mainly religious cities, Mecca, Medina, with Jeddah, with the airport. And you have the infrastructure of expanding the Grand Mosque in Mecca and Medina. And you have all the new towers coming up. You have a tremendous number of towers coming up in the Grand Mosque, around the Grand Mosque.
While money's pouring into religious cities and Saudi businesses like budget airline Nasser is expanding within the country, there is a feeling that opening Saudi up to a wider audience would have a knock-on effect for lots in the industry.
In other part of the world, obviously the tourism for an airline industry is a very large portion of its business. And therefore we're trying to encourage this. And work with the Saudi Tourism Board to actually have means to ease the tourism. But we can start already with the Saudis discovering their own kingdom better, and therefore offering a good domestic network is part of that strategy. There's a very large number of expats that actually live within the kingdom, 2 million expats living in the kingdom, and a lot of them would like to discover Saudi. So we have to build in the infrastructure so that it's there present. And as the time goes by, I'm very optimistic in the fact that as the time goes by, we'll ease the tourism, at least coming from the GCC, which they don't have the same restrictions, obviously. to not only come to Mecca, but to discover and visit other places in the kingdom.
There's certainly been interest here at the fair, at least in the freebies that Saudi's been giving away. But until the country relaxes its tourist rules, it looks like there'll be more people pushing their luggage around these stands than packing their bags for Riyadh.
Katie Watson reporting there. Now, this week, Dubai's Emirates airline announced more healthy profits, but said its high oil prices ate heavily into its bottom line, accounting for more than 40% of costs. But as well as pricey fuel, airlines in this part of the world have had to contend with the fallout from the Arab uprisings. So how have things changed over the past couple of years? That's a question I put to the airline's president, Tim Clark.
There was a degree of, let's say, struggling going on within, certainly in Dubai and other places in the world. I mean, we know that. But the pace of life and the pace of economic activity has picked up a lot in Dubai. Emirates continued to grow its operation. It was one of those entities in the gross domestic product of Dubai that never really suffered from the global recession, the meltdown. If the truth be known, we actually excelled in that time because we had a very diverse network. We were continuing to move traffic across the hub, grow the hub, look after the needs of Dubai such as they were then, and are well positioned today because we've grown even further to service the needs of Dubai, particularly with the tourism side of things. Had we slowed down, had we contracted like a lot of our peer group airlines have done, it might have been a different story.
What about the future of your industry? What have you learned?
No obstacle is going to get in our way. We'll go under, round, over, whatever we have to do to keep the whole airline on course. We've got ourselves in a position where I think we can deal with most things. The most difficult one was fuel, sitting up there at $120. It had no right to be there. It still has no right to be there, but that's where it is.
All right, so new routes, looking at the world and opportunity. What are you doing? Bearing in mind changes happening in some countries like India, for example, where you can now go in and buy a stake in an airline.
Look, the world is changing. It's flatlined for a bit, but then it'll pick up like the proverbial cork in the water. It'll come bouncing out. The airline community is looking at all sorts of things. So you see acquisitions starting to reappear. We see recently with Etihad and Jet Airways. And there are other signs of what's going on. For us, it's a question of continuing to grow our business, hopefully in Asia, more so in China, South America, Africa, very big, Oceania, because now we have the arrangement with the Qantas, which gives us a huge opportunity. We're about halfway through. If we don't get access to the levels that we would like, India, China, it doesn't stop us, we just go somewhere else.
Tim Clark from Emirates Airlines speaking to me there. Now, Abu Dhabi has similar tourism ambitions to its neighbour Dubai. It's building world-class museums, water parks and 5-star hotels. But is it in danger of ignoring the tourist with less cash to splash? Well, Jonathan Fruin has been there to find out.
Reminding visitors of a more simple life before oil brought untold riches, this is Abu Dhabi's heritage village. Thousands of tourists come to take a look every day, and it's just one element of the UAE capital's efforts to focus its tourism on culture. Authorities are also building major museums in partnership with New York's Guggenheim and Paris's Louvre. And whereas brash neighbour Dubai built the world's tallest building, Abu Dhabi came up with something perhaps more stunning, though definitely different. But what do visitors to the village think of Abu Dhabi's tourism potential?
We stopped off at Dubai for 3 days and we've done a small trip to Abu Dhabi just to have a look around and visited the mosque and all of the rather large buildings going up, and it's rather hot and all the buildings are rather decadent.
It's a fabulous destination to go to, yeah, because the diversity of the infrastructure here is incredible.
The city's also focusing on fun and has an island dedicated to leisure, including an indoor Ferrari theme park and a Formula One circuit. And at the start of this year, it opened a water park on Yas Island as well.
We wanted to create this amazing experience that was based in Emirati culture, had the best ride, slides and attractions anywhere in the world, and I think we accomplished it.
But not everything is rosy in Abu Dhabi's tourism scene. The building behind me says it's a Roccoforte hotel. Just a few weeks ago, though, the British 5-star brand pulled out of its operation, just 18 months after the hotel opened. So what went wrong?
At the time that we signed up for that, we were promised that all of the banks would be moving into the neighbourhood, all of the embassies would be moving into the neighbourhood, there'd be a big apartment block and there'd be a big luxury mall. And on that basis, we thought we would attract the right sort of customers. Unfortunately, none of those other buildings has yet to appear. In the event, I think the owner and we have agreed that it's better as a 4-star hotel. There's a very big oversupply of hotels in Abu Dhabi. Many more luxury hotels than there are customers.
Whilst visitor numbers are growing in Abu Dhabi and hotel revenues are rising too, hotel oversupply means the average room rate for hotels fell another 2% in the first 3 months of this year. At the moment, many tourists just take a day trip from Dubai. Some critics say that a wealth of luxury hotels indicate a lack of focus on less wealthy travellers, and the appetite for hotel building seems to have come before the projects needed to make them viable are completed.
Infrastructure is definitely one that requires a lot more effort and work, and I think speeding up that process, because we've seen this happen. There's a hotel ready, but access to the hotel is always difficult, and strangely enough, you think it's tried and tested and people should know that you need to get your roads ready before you drive up to the hotel. So that is I think, one element that is a little difficult.
Abu Dhabi's tourism goals are less lofty than Dubai, which has just announced a plan to double tourist visitors by 2020 to 20 million a year. The capital is looking for 7 million tourists a year by 2030, which would mean trebling its current visitor numbers over a much longer period. Whilst the Tourism Authority refutes suggestions there are too many hotels, luxury or otherwise, it does accept that there are still obstacles to overcome when it comes to attracting tourists.
As you know, there's what's going on around the Middle East. People doesn't know where exactly this happened, and they thought this is like within our region, but this is, far away from us. Just we have to go outside and still going more and promoting the destination more.
Back at the Heritage Village, tour guides I spoke with say that while visitor numbers are up, tourism will only rapidly expand when the long-awaited major museums open. And they should help Abu Dhabi take the next step in building its reputation as being more than just Dubai's neighbour.
Jonathan Fruin reporting there. Now, from revolutions to resorts, what will it take to get visitors back after troubled times? Join us for a special debate after the break. Welcome back to the programme. I'm Nima Abouarde. As regional unrest continues, so too does its effect on tourism, and it's a crucial sector for cash-strapped countries like Egypt, Tunisia and Lebanon. So can more visitors be enticed to return with the lack of stability? And what is the role of governments, hotels and airlines in reviving this sector? Well, joining me to discuss this is Egypt's Minister of Tourism, Hisham Zarour, the Chief Operating Officer of Intercontinental Hotels Group Middle East, Pascal Galvin, and from TRI Hospitality Consulting, Christopher Hewitt. So, Minister, let's turn to Egypt first. Tourism accounted for about, 10% of your country's economic output before the revolution. Where are things now?
About the same, because the whole economy actually suffered. But in absolute terms, if you take the numbers before the revolution, we received 14.7 million tourists, generating an income of about 12.5 billion US dollars. The year of the revolution, we ended up with a 32% less in terms of numbers and about 30% in terms of revenue. So we did suffer a lot.
So what are you doing about increasing the number of tourists and visitors? What's your strategy?
At the moment, we're using tactical methods. The media, I'm sorry to say that, was not too kind to us the past 2 years, concentrating on Tahrir Square. Egypt is not Tahrir Square. Egypt, of the 1 million square kilometers, you can't sum it up in 1 square kilometer around Tahrir Square or the Presidential Palace. I mean, the rest of the touristic areas in Egypt is just doing fine and sound. People are still pouring into these areas and enjoying their time.
Okay, now do you share, Pascal, the Minister's confidence in Egypt?
Oh, absolutely. I think Minister is right. We have an hotel on the Tahrir Square, and yes, of course, this hotel is suffering. The business has been really affected. And the numbers have really dropped. But we have another hotel, another complex, and these hotels are doing better than they were doing in the other year.
And what about across the region then? What do you see happening? Of course, you can see very immediately sentiment because people either book hotel rooms or they cancel them very quickly.
Yes, absolutely, you're right. So it's all about the regionalization of the business. So sometime Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan are on the high and people go for holidays there. The amazing thing about the Middle East, if you lose in one side, you gain it on the other side. So for example, Dubai has benefited from the Arab Spring in general. Normally we have a low season in Dubai. For the last 2 years, we are not experiencing any low season.
And so, Christopher, what is it that we're seeing across this region?
There's a number of countries that are also suffering from the same concerns. When it comes to those unrest, Lebanon's suffering because of this proximity to Syria. Bahrain had its own internal issues, which has caused quite a big impact when it comes to the hotel performance there.
What is it that people need to see for them to actually book that trip?
It's about continuity, really, and this sense of safety and security. We say sometimes no news in Egypt is good news for us because it's a very resilient market. So as soon as nobody speaks about Egypt for some time, the number of bookings is just moving up. But of course, all of a sudden, if one incident happens in Tahrir Square, again, it just stops.
What is happening in Egypt, though? On the one hand, you have hotels that are becoming more segregated, coffee shops that are becoming more segregated, and so on. Is that your new focus? You've also, of course, yourself said that Egypt welcomes people in bikinis who drink alcohol. So it's a bit confusing.
No, it's not confusing. I mean, the laws in the country permit people to come and enjoy and not change their lifestyles or culture. I mean, people coming from Europe are used to a certain
law
dress
might
code.
allow it.
No,
but
and
it's
the
about
people
sentiment
accept
on the
that.
ground.
No, the sentiments are accepting.
And what is your
it.
focus then? Is it more religious tourism? Is it conservative tourism? Is it intra-regional Arab tourism? What is it?
We're not focusing on religious tourism as alone. We're focusing on every possible kind of tourism to come to the country, adding on and not subtracting from the existing business. Because of this, I'm sending the message. I said, please do not think there is a change in the way you're going to come and enjoy the country. Come, if you are wearing bikinis, bikinis are welcomed. If you like to enjoy a glass of wine with your dinner, still served, the laws permitted, the people are accepting it. So that's the message.
You can say something is written, enshrined in a
Yes.
law and so on. At the end of the day, it's about what people do on the ground. Egypt still is finding its footing. You've got this struggle between the Salafis, the Muslim Brotherhood. You yourself are an independent.
Yes.
So how does that work? You might say bikinis and alcohol are welcome, but the people on the ground don't have don't think like you.
People that are opposing that, I would tell them, they're not the whole of Egypt. I'm not the whole of Egypt. We need to coexist together.
But it takes one incident. It takes one big problem for the tourism sector, again, to be affected negatively.
Well, if you look back in the past 2 years where really things were flaring up everywhere, nothing was targeted against the tourist itself or his or her lifestyle. That's in itself a living example. So when things is cooling down, I think it's a better perspective and a much more positive approach towards things. That's my feeling, and that's my impression.
So what is it like operating in this region? Things can change very quickly.
Yes, so you have to be ready, you have to be proactive. We train people in handling situation, like if there is people coming through the lobby of the hotel, like we had at some point. So how do we react? How do we protect?
You're talking about demonstrators.
Yeah, our customers, how we don't interact with them, how do we protect the asset and our guests, because that's the most important for us. I mean, we went through in Lebanon exactly the same. And unfortunately or fortunately, we gain a lot of experience through this. And because we've been there a long time, we know how to make sure our customers and employees are safe and secure.
But what about things like investment in infrastructure, say, and that sort of thing? What do you see lacking at the moment?
Well, I think it depends on which market you look at, because if you look at Egypt, historical and cultural landmarks and the Red Sea and the likes are their strength. There doesn't really need to be a very strong development of tourism infrastructure, so to say, when it comes to big shopping malls, etc. If you look at some of the GCC countries, I think that's what you do need to focus on. Looking at Bahrain in particular, they've got one of the largest captive audience next door in Saudi Arabia. And leisure and shopping and tourism, tourism is the biggest motivational for Saudi nationals when it comes to visiting other GCC countries.
What you're really saying is that there are some countries in the region that have a great starting point. They have a lot of historical sites and heritage sites like Libya and Iraq. Will we live to see the day where Iraq and Libya are key destinations?
We will, for sure we will, because again, things are changing, things are moving. Iran and Iraq before, or long years ago, were our #1 customers in the Middle East. This business is a cycle, so it goes and comes back.
And very briefly, in terms of investment, what do you see? What's really needed if you take that big helicopter view of the region as a whole, Middle East and North Africa?
Well, I think it comes down to government support, when it comes to legislation and support for investors. Secondly, it's making sure that they make, there is financial sense in it. If we look at tourism investment and hotel investment in particular, there has to be that demand of tourists there to make sure that any development is going to work. But I think it has to do with confidence as well. If investors have confidence in the government, they're going to have confidence in being able to invest in there, because there's nothing worse than putting your money into a country not knowing if you can even get it out in the first place.
I think this is a very important point, because our customers in hotels, we talk about leisure in Egypt, but it's also all the businessmen that are staying in hotels and the confidence to invest in the country. For example, our owners who have the hotel that we are operating in Egypt are Egyptian partners, but are from other countries, are from Saudi, from Kuwait, that are investing in the infrastructure in Egypt to really welcome customers. So we need also to give them the confidence that their investment can be sustainable. As soon as the guests are coming back to a country, the investor will follow. And again, it's a snowball effect, and we are creating more demand for any destination.
Why should an investor look at investing in Egypt?
You have only one pyramid, and that's in Egypt. You have only one Nile, that is in Egypt. You have a fantastic Red Sea and the natural heritage that we have. We have incentives that we're giving for investors to come over, including incentives for airline companies.
How do you know that what you promise will happen?
Well, I got assurances from the political leaders, the new political leaders that is in power. They have come to realize how important tourism is for the country. It could be the vehicle, the horse that pulls this carriage, the wagon of Egyptian economy. That's why I was not too sure 8-9 months ago. Today, I'm so confident of the future.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining us. Now, our time is very nearly up for this week. I do hope you've enjoyed our programme. Before we go, let's see how the region's main markets performed. And remember, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is middleeastbiz@bbc.co.uk. And you can go to Twitter and Facebook for latest photos and news from our teams across the world. Now, next week, we're in Saudi Arabia. Construction is booming in the kingdom, but while investors are quick to put their money in high-end skyscrapers, not enough is being done when it comes to low-cost housing. So what's being done about this? Until then, from me, Nima Abu Wardi, and the rest of the team, thank you for watching.